Alright, hello everybody, and welcome back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. My name is Full Metal Digimon, and today I'm going to show you no frills, no lace. This is actually my top favorite deck and my main account that I use on Master Duel. So today we're looking at Dark Magician and Branded mixed together. That's right. So Dark Magician is not a top tier deck, though the strategy can be excessively powerful. The only problem is in Master Duel, it is excessively expensive. So as you can imagine, this account took a very long time to set up. You can see just the ridiculous amount of ultra rares that went into this deck. I had to put every little resource into it, though this is in fact a maximum power Dark Magician list. So let's just jump right into what makes a Dark Magician branded deck. So first off, you obviously have your Dark Magician. This card we play 2 copies of. You always want at least a second one, and you want to be able to see this card as often as possible, but you definitely don't want 3 because you will brick on it. You also have Magician Souls. This is probably one of the most powerful cards in this deck, and once we get Illusion of Chaos, it will be the most powerful card in the whole deck. This card lets you send spells and traps from your hand or field to the graveyard to draw cards for the number you sent. And if this card is in your hand, you can send your Dark Magician, or your Dark Magician Girl, or your Oracle Mahad to the graveyard to then summon this card, or a Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl from your graveyard. We run 3 of these because we want to use this every turn if possible. We run 3 Magician's Rod. Magician's Rod on normal summon will add 1 spell or trap from your deck to your hand that mentions the Dark Magician directly in it. And then, if this card is in your graveyard, during your opponent's turn and you activate a spell or trap, you will be able to add this card back to your hand. There's also the effects of spells and traps, so continuous spells and traps will work as well. Dark Magician cards, we have the Dark Magician Girl. Very simple, we only use it for additional draws and the double summon that we get off of our field spell. And then Palladium Oracle Mahad. This is not a typical card ran in this deck, this is my personal choice. Running the branded package, you typically would want a light target to also have in the deck if you wanted to summon Albion instead of Lubellion. So you can send this one, and if you have this, the Dark Magician Girl, and the Dark Magician in your graveyard by chance, then the card will go over soon. We'll be able to draw 3 instead of just 2. But it also says if you draw this card, you can reveal it and special summon it from your hand. If this card battles a dark monster, its attack is doubled. And if this card is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can special summon a Dark Magician from your hand, deck, or graveyard. Alright, so if you draw it, insta-summon, right in the draw phase. Pretty awesome. Outs like the entire Despia deck just by swinging over them. It's pretty funny. It's not super great, not super relevant, but it's not terrible, and I happen to draw one. Let's see. We also run the Magician Salvation. Very important card, and the reason that we originally started to run Terraforming in this deck. Magician Salvation. When you activate this card, you can set your Eternal Soul directly from the deck. And any time that you normal or special summon a Dark Magician or a Dark Magician Girl, you can target it and then summon the opposite one from your graveyard. This is a hard once per turn, but it is pretty powerful to be able to just summon 2 monsters for free every single turn. This card sets Eternal Soul. Eternal Soul says every Dark Magician in your monster zone is unaffected by your opponent's card effects. A lot of people forget this, and they forget to read this card. If this card is destroyed, destroy all monsters you control. That's the downside. But every turn, it says once per turn, you can special summon a Dark Magician from your hand or graveyard, or add some irrelevant cards to your hand, and you'll never use those abilities. So this card lets you summon the Dark Magician back from your graveyard every single turn. And if you have it set up with the Salvation, you will then resummon the Dark Magician Girl alongside it every single turn. The reason that is good is you have your Dark Magician Circle. First, when you activate this card, you can look at the top 3 cards of your deck and take a Dark Magician or a spell trap that mentions him and add it to your hand, and then you get to pick the order of cards on the top of your deck, which can be very, very good in this deck, and we play around that heavily. It also says anytime a Dark Magician is normal or special summoned to the field, you can once per turn target and banish a card your opponent controls. And that could be a monster or a back row. Very powerful. You want to recycle this every turn, get your free banish, 2 monsters on the field, and then, keep going from there. We also have Soul Servant. This is a very important card in this deck. It says you can take any card that is Dark Magician or mentions Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl from your deck and place it on top of your deck. And then during your main phase, you can banish this card from your graveyard to draw cards equal to the number of Palladium, Dark Magician, and Dark Magician Girls with different names on the field or in the graveyard. So that is why we play this, because draw 3, as you can see from Runic, is absolutely broken. The last Dark Magician card that we run in the main deck is the Secrets of Dark Magic. This is a quick play spell card that essentially just lets you fusion summon a monster using your hand or field. So it is just a quick play fusion to go into your Dark Magicians during the battle phase, typically to swing out for more damage. Now, the extra cards that we play to boost the Dark Magician strategy specifically is we play triple Upstart Goblin. This card lets you draw a card, and then your opponent gains 1,000 life points. We don't care because this is a control deck, and life points don't matter until you don't have any left. So between this letting you draw 1 card, and Soul Servant and Magician Circle stacking your deck, a lot of times this actually is almost a search. We also play 2 copies of Chicken Game to go along with our Magician Salvation and our hidden tech, the Secret Village of the Spellcasters. Since all of these are field spells and we do play Terraforming, it's pretty easy to get into these. Chicken Game basically lets you pay 1,000 life points to draw a card on your turn, and then you can replace it with another field spell to where your opponent doesn't get that chance to activate any of its abilities. Let's see. Yeah, other than that, we play some good hand traps. A Cross-Out Designator, Ash Blossom Enjoys Spring, 2 Maxis just because 3 gets a little bricky, and I don't play Nibiru, so I don't need to draw a ton of cards. And then we also play a very small spellbook package, just 1 Magician, Blue Boy, 1 Spellbook of Secrets, and 1 Spellbook of Knowledge. I don't ever want to see a bunch of Spellbook cards in my hand. I'm not playing Spellbooks, I just want to draw 2. Okay, and that's what that is for. Yeah, so let's move on. We'll just show off the extra deck monsters for the Dark Magician side, and then we'll talk a bit about the branded. So there's 2 main fusion monsters for the Dark Magician. You have the Dark Magicians, that's him and the Dark Magician Girl hanging out. It says once per turn, if a spell, trap, or effect is activated, you can draw a card, and then if it was a spell or a trap, you can set it, and if it's a trap or a quick play, you could activate it this turn. So that's very good, lets you set. I don't play a lot of quick plays in here, but it'll let you set or activate any of these, or your Cross-Out Designator, or your Soul Servant, right from the top of your deck, which is very good when it goes off, but not even the biggest part. The biggest part, honestly, is that if this card is destroyed, you can special summon both a Dark Magician and Dark Magician Girl from your hand, deck, or graveyard. Now, this card only takes a Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl and a Spellcaster, so if you can make this with just one of the materials, say you just have the Dark Magician and you make this, and then this card gets dealt with, you can then summon your Dark Magician Girl straight from the deck, and then you'll have your draw 2 with your Soul Servant. The other monster that is Dark Magician specific that you can go into is the Dark Magician, the Dragon Knight. This card's name becomes Dark Magician while on the field or in the graveyard, which means Eternal Soul fully interacts with it, making him unaffected and being able to summon him back from the graveyard. Your opponent cannot target spell or traps you control with card effects, and also they cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. So this card with Eternal Soul up is a pretty hefty lock to get through. It's reminiscent of the Red Eyes Dragoon that I wish we could play. Other than that, the other in-house is the Baron de Fleur. I know it doesn't look like we can play this, but fun fact about Ash Blossom is it is in fact a level 3 tuner monster. So this level 3 tuner monster with our level 7 Dark Magician goes right into a Baron de Fleur. Palladium Oracle Mahad is also a level 7, so if you happen to draw him and special summon for free and you have an Ash Blossom, you might as well take the Omni Negate over the Ash Blossom Negate. Okay, we have the Imduck the World Chalice Dragon. You can replace this with Link Spider, but I think this one's a little better. its link material is just any normal monster, so that lets you put your Dark Magician in the graveyard to be able to special summon him again. During your main phase, you could... That's not important. The important part of this card is at the start of the damage step, if this card battles an opponent's monster that he points to, you insta-destroy it at the start of battle. It's not super duper relevant, but it is kind of like a relinquished anima for this deck. If you don't need your battle phase, that's a pretty good idea if they summon in the wrong spot. We have the Crowley First Prophecyr. This card lets you reveal 3 spellbook cards with different names from your deck. So this will let you reveal all 3 of the spellbook cards from our deck if we hadn't drawn them yet, and then you randomly add one to your hand and shuffle the rest back. The final part's actually really relevant too. We'll get into that for a second. You only really want to go into this card if you haven't drawn any of your spellbook cards. The most typical way is to have a Rod and a Souls, which is awesome. Then you can link into Crowley, and then you can go ahead and draw and get your Dark Magician cards all set up. Crowley also says, and nobody ever seems to notice or use this effect, it says each turn, 1 level 5 or higher spellcaster monster you normal summon can be summoned without tribute. So that will actually let you just normal summon your Dark Magician Girl, or your Dark Magician, or your Palladium Oracle Mahad if you happen to brick on him. You just need to make sure that you are summoning Crowley with materials that you special summon so that you still have your normal summon for the turn, which can be very useful if you Eternal Soul, summon back a Dark Magician and a Dark Magician Girl, go into Crowley, now you can summon the Oracle Mahad that you bricked on in your hand. There are combos to this deck that people don't really seem to understand. And then we have the basic link package. We have the IP Masquerena, which can be used with normal monsters, so very useful. You have to get around that with the Dark Magician a lot, which is why we play the Umduck, so that we can go into cards like Verite Anaconda, which uses to affect monsters specifically. You have Nightmare Unicorn for the IP to spin a card back to the deck. We have Selene, which is absolutely broken in this deck. Tons of spell cards, tons of spellcasters to summon with it. And then, of course, an access code talker to just get some heavy damage. Now, back in the day, we used to play this with Hulk and with Effect Veiler to get to the Selene combo very quickly. But obviously, we cannot do that anymore. So what we do now is we play Fallen of Albaz and Branded Fusion. So finally on to the branded package. The reason I waited so long is because it really is only 5 cards in my whole deck that create this branded package, but they are so powerful on their own, and there's so much draw power in this deck. You have 3 draw cards here, 2 draw cards here, a draw 2 here, a draw 1, a draw 2, or a draw 3 over here. So 2 max Cs, there's lots and lots of ways. You're going to end up with just a branded fusion in your hand regardless. Or you can Fallen of Albaz with any extra deck monster your opponent has, and you can go into your Mirror Jade. So for the branded fusion monsters, we play 1 Lubellion and 2 Albions. Lubellion is what you want to go into typically first. You can, in fact, branded fusion, go into him sending your Dark Magician and Fallen of Albaz, and that will get your Dark Magician in the graveyard. You can then Lubellion discard a card to summon your Dark Magician, the Dragon Knight. Now it sounds like you're losing a Dark Magician, but this card's name is Dark Magician while on the field or in the graveyard. So even if you link this card off and it's in the graveyard, you can then still revive it with your Eternal Soul. So you really want to use this Dark Magician, the Dragon Knight, and have people forget that they cannot destroy your back row cards. You also have the Albions, which can be fusion summoned using Fallen of Albaz plus a light monster, which would be your Palladium Oracle Mahad. And when he's fusion summoned, you can banish materials from your hand, field, or graveyard to summon another fusion monster in addition to this one. And then this card can attack the turn that you do that, whereas this one cannot. So you would summon this, and then you would use the Palladium and a Dark Magician, probably to go into the Dark Magicians, or into a Dragosypelia, which is just a quick play, target a face-up monster and negate it. And then Mirror Jade, you should know what this does. You can only control 1 and quick effect send an Albion to the graveyard from your extra deck, and then banish 1 monster on the field. This is a non-targeting banish. and if you do so, the next turn, so if you use it on your turn, you wouldn't be able to use it on your opponent's turn. You would only be able to use it again on your own turn. So it's for 2 turns that you can't use its effect again, essentially. You can get around this by banishing it and resummoning it, though we do not play Ad Libitum or any of the other Despia cards in this deck. It is simply a small branded package. And then a combo we go into a lot is any 2 effect monsters can go into the Predaplant Verte Anaconda, and you can then send a branded fusion from your deck to the graveyard, which will allow you to immediately summon into Mirror Jade by sending an Albaz and the Verte Anaconda itself to the graveyard. And then you can play this and send an Albion during your opponent's turn, and then at the end of your opponent's turn, you will search a branded fusion, which you can then use to go into your Lubellion and your Dragonite and all your other stuff. So, yeah, I think that's about it. I mean, we'll go over the hand traps again on this. I have Cross Out, Ash Blossom, and I chose 2 Maxis. I actually do, in fact, have 3. I just, it's really just too much. It's too much in this deck. You don't need to draw that many cards. Yeah, but that's the profile. I know it's pretty long. This is my favorite deck, and there's a lot of reasons. This has been fine-tuned to this point. They go into another one really fast. Secret Village of the Spellcaster is almost an auto win versus Runic. It says if only you control a Spellcaster, your opponent cannot activate spell cards. And if you control no Spellcasters, you cannot activate spell cards. Now it says activate spell cards, not the effect of spell cards. So even if you accidentally lock yourself out, as long as your cards are still face up on the field, your continuous ones, it wouldn't be a big deal at all. And we tend to rely on a lot of monster effects after a certain point. So yeah, that's all for the deck profile. Let's jump into a few replays. We got 3 awesome replays for you today. So we opened up absolutely broken. We're gonna Dark Magical Circle first, because that will bait out an Ash. Or let you know if they have an Ash or not. So I see that he doesn't. I get to add a Dark Magician to my hand. And we're going to summon the Magician's Rod, grab the Salvation. We should have grabbed Soul Servant, but it's fine. We're going to Magician Salvation, setting the Eternal Soul straight from the deck. And we're going to go in for the Branded Fusion. Now I misplay here. I should have sent a second Dark Magician and sent up a Dark Magician, the Dragon Knight. But instead we're going to go the branded line. So we're going to Lubellion, discarding the Dark Magician, to Fusion Summon using the Albaz and the Lubellion into a Mirror Jade, the Ice Blade Dragon. Mirror Jade has a non-targeting banish, and can technically search you a branded fusion for the next turn. So we go ahead and pass it on over. He's going to Pot of Desires, draw 2. No problem. We're going to go ahead and just max C, because why not? And then he Noblemans a Crossout, but it turns out he doesn't have a max C. He's going to call Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, which is a good backup because I'm most likely going to try to draw into an Ash Blossom or a Nibiru, so that could be something you want to preemptively negate. So he's going to Imperm our Mirror Jade here, and we say that's fine. We're going to send the Albion and banish ourselves. So he's going to normal summon the Taya. We're going to go ahead and Eternal Soul. I thought that was Mo Yi. That's why we went ahead and banished it immediately. But it's still no problem. So he's going to go ahead and special summon his Tenyi's. And now we're going to start drawing some cards. Linking into the Monk of the Tenyi. So he can special summon the Ashuna. No, he special summons a Vushuta from the deck. We're still drawing. We're drawing broken cards too. He's going to return the Taya to his hand, link these into a Shaman, and he's going to go ahead into the battle phase, swing it into our Rod. So we're going to fuse the 2 monsters we have on the field for our Dark Magicians. And so in his main phase 2, he's going to Long Wand, setting up for the level 10 Synchro. He should have gone into Barone de Fleur here, but he did not. He went into the Chengus instead. And he's going to droplet for no reason, negating our draw 1. So in the end phase, we get the Albion searching for the Branded Fusion. Our hand is entirely stacked. I don't think there's any way he can get around what we're doing here. So we're going to go ahead Soul Servant for the Magician Soul, since surprisingly we didn't draw one. And the Dark Magicians, if you activate a Soul Servant while the Dark Magicians is on the field, you'll stack the card and then immediately draw the card, which is amazing. Well, Magician Soul sending the Dark Magician Girl to the graveyard, and then we're going to set up our Blue Boy draw 2. So Secrets can search Blue Boy, or Blue Boy can search Secrets, and then the other one will search the Knowledge, and then you just send the Secrets to the graveyard to draw 2. And we're going to Magician Souls, get rid of some of these garbage cards for more cards. Right now I'm actually trying to draw into Palladium for just the 3+1. And because I have so many draws, we could have chicken gamed, but we're going to Magician Salvation, banish his Chang'e, summon our Dark Magician and the Dark Magician Girl, and he said, that's enough, I don't want to watch any more. On to the next replay. Alright, so the first replay shows you just how strong Branded Fusion is. For this replay, we're actually going to rely a little more on the Dark Magician fusions and play off of that. So we're going to Branded Fusion sending the Dark Magician and the Albaz for Lubellion, and Lubellion will activate to discard our other Dark Magician and return one Dark Magician and the Albaz to the deck to summon a Dark Magician, the Dragon Knight. Now this will protect our back row. We're going to go ahead and Soul Servant, risking it. We're going for the Rod. Soul Servant's going to let us draw one right into the Rod and summon it. Rod will let us search for either Salvation or Circle. We go for the Circle for the Banish and see if we can grab anything. We grab a Soul Servant off the top. Beautiful. This deck does revolve a little bit around luck, but also has 3 independent lines that you can go down. So you have a lot of options, though it is not very flexible as far as the deck goes. So he's going to Smashing Ground. He's got some ciphers, so it doesn't seem like he's going to do anything worthwhile. Though I wanted to keep this replay just to show you more of like how the deck functions. So in the end phase, we're going to Soul Servant, stacking the Salvation on our deck. We could have stacked another Rod to summon, but we're just going to go for the Salvation. Salvation will set up our Eternal Soul from the deck. And we are going to just go ahead and fuse these two. Now his name is Dark Magician on the field for the graveyard. That is important to remember. Okay, so we're going to go into our Dark Magicians. We're going to activate the Soul Servant to draw. Okay, and that will activate the Dark Magicians to also draw. So we draw into 2 draw 1s. So we're going to go ahead and Upstart Goblin, drawing nothing, and we don't want to get rid of our Salvation just yet. And he uses Trap Hole of Spikes. Not a bad normal trap, honestly, if you're looking for something really cheap. It says when an opponent's monster was normal or special summoned this turn declares an attack, destroy that attacking monster, and then inflict damage to your opponent equal to half the original attack. So he destroys our Dark Magicians, which actually triggers it to summon the Dark Magician from the deck and a Dark Magician Girl from the deck. So we're going to banish his monster, but also the Dark Magicians will then trigger the Magician's Salvation. Since we have a Dark Magician in the graveyard, we can summon it off of the Dark Magician Girl. So then we attack, and once again, this is a Dark Magician in the graveyard. Amazing. So we go ahead, we do tons of damage, we pass it over, we set a second Eternal Soul just in case he destroys one, then we can go ahead and flip the other and resummon a Dark Magician and stay in the game. He's going to play his Galaxy Cleric and murder himself. So that is displaying how to recycle your Dark Magician, the Dragon Knight. Alright, now for the last replay, it's a little spicy. Okay, and so we're here on this last replay, and we bricked pretty hard. We do have the Salvation, Eternal Soul, and the Dark Magician, but we don't have our circle, so we're going to go ahead and try to draw into a rod or a circle. We draw a second Eternal Soul again off the upstart. Unlucky. So we're going to go ahead and pass it over. And we're playing against Dragon Maids, which can be quite a difficult deck to get around, though it's not horrendous of a matchup for this deck. So he's going to summon his Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon, summon the Nurse Dragon Maid. He's using World Legacy Guard Dragon to move his monsters around, and you can reborn a level 4 or lower dragon from your graveyard with it. He summons the Dragon Knight Romulus, which will grab the Dragon's Ravine, and also can special summon a Dragon or Winged Beast from your hand, though he's not going to use that effect right now. He goes ahead and moves that over for some reason and swings in with both. We're just going to let him do the damage, not a big deal. We want to keep our Dark Magician in the end phase. So we're going to Eternal Soul, summon Dark Magician from our hand. And now that it's our turn, oh my god, we drew into the Dark Magician circle. Beautiful. We play it, don't grab anything off the top, but it's no big deal. We go into the Induct, tribute it for the Dark Magician Girl. Tribute summoning will, in fact, activate the Magician Salvation, letting us banish his Darkness Metal Dragon. We're going to swing in with our two Magicians here. And in the main phase 2, we're going to link off into an IP Mask Arena. And then remember that we use Salvation to resummon our Dark Magician, so we can then Eternal Soul to summon a Dark Magician from the graveyard now. So now we already have materials on board to Unicorn. We also have the Selene in here just in case you don't need to Unicorn. So we don't need to get rid of any of the cards off his field, so we're going to just go into the Selene. Selene's going to get a whole bunch of counters. And in the end phase, we can Eternal Soul the Dark Magician back and the Dark Magician Girl. So you can see now how effective this deck is at link climbing. We literally have only had these two monsters the whole game, and we've link climbed all the way up into an access code talker. So if he had had some monsters on the board, we could have linked off. The whole reason we did the Amduck is so that you have a Wind Engrave to use with the access code. Yeah, but that's all the replays I have for you guys today. This deck is honestly super powerful. It's not the best deck, it's not a meta deck, but since Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel is a best of one game, you are definitely going to get a ton of wins with this deck. You can easily climb to Platinum, the lower Diamond ranks. You might have some trouble trying to get into the upper Diamond ranks with this deck because there are a lot of bricks and a lot of situations that you'll end up where you can't do a lot. But this deck has an insane power level. You can IP, you can throw Appaloosa in there, you can throw a Boral Sword in there if you don't like the access code talker. But yeah, let me know if you want to see more decks in the future, and subscribe and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.